So let me start with a little story. Once upon a time, like a very long time ago, there was a little boy living in the north, in the cold, like north, and his father was a great hunter. His mother was taking care of him. He was very happy and would love to go hunting with his father. And then their parents had another child, a little girl. And when that little sister came to the world, like he was very upset about it and started to grow angry because his parents were only taking care of him, wouldn't take care of him anymore. So he kind of grew and grew that anger, and at some point he left home and went in the wild, in the wilderness, in the cold, and started to and encountered a shaman who gave him, who was like an evil shaman, an evil sorcerer, who started to give him some powers, and evil powers over people. And as he grew up and as his anger grew, he went on top of a hill to summon evil powers and to start a huge blizzard and a huge white storm to destroy the villages and the dwellings of all the people around. Like he had like so much of big anger. At the top of the hill, he raised his arms and started to stop the blizzard because at some point it was like too much. And he stayed like this throughout the night. And in the morning, he was turned into stone. And that's how like the first Kenojuak was born. So that's a legend, a story from the Inuit. So people dwelling in the Arctic, mostly in northern Canada. And
I'm pretty sure that's true.
Maybe.
Yeah, no.
Maybe. And like there's so much spiritual life over there. So definitely there's a truth in it. So Kenojuak in Inuit, the language of the Inuit, means it is the compilation of two words, Inuk, which is man, human being, and Juk, who is like. So an Kenojuak looks like a man. And you can find them across the north and the Arctic. Initially or technically to be as landmarks and to indicate directions. It's like someone has been there, like we've built it and it's built with stone, like human-like. Meaning also like you're on the right path, so indicating directions. Nowadays, not so much, but in the past, especially as the Inuit were a nomadic people, also to indicate directions for migration or navigation. So it's usually like on top of hills. That's more for the technical part. The spiritual part is usually like close to a spiritual place or a place that has a lot of powers where you can gather spirits. It was also used, and I put them, it was used as a symbol for the Vancouver Olympics in 2010. And it's on the flag of Nunavut, which is the latest territory of Canada, that was created in 1999. Because it really like represents not only the people, but also like there's spiritual guidance in it. I put a little poem that I'd like to read you by an Inuit writer and artist. I'm an Inuk, so Inuk is the singular of Inuit, so one dweller of the north. One whose ancestors sheltered in the wintry blue of the great Arctic, one whose future is free like the wild animal in the Arctic spirit. I am an Inuk who is given a place in the tundra so I can remember the cold winter darkness and the bright spring day. I am an Inuk and I know that my heart is free to go where all animals are free. I like this poem when I start to read it and to step upon it because it's simple, but it really like depicts what is the world of the Inuit. And it's in the Arctic with spirits, and spirits are very important in their life, in their world, in their communities. And it's a land, inhabited by cold, winter, darkness, and a few animals. And animals are a big part of their life because that's how they can survive. And that, I'll make the link afterwards with what Inuit art and artistic creation was, but that's definitely what inspired it. So it's definitely their world. Here are some pictures mostly ancient pictures. Those are like the 1930s, 1940s of an Inuit family near an igloo, which is the winter dwelling when they were moving and traveling and to find the right place to settle for a bit for hunting. Here it's how they made it, like cutting the ice with a knife and building it step by step. This is a settlement more spring-like or summer-like, and here part of the settlement with huskies, with dogs. Just to give an idea, again, like where the creation occurred and where they come from, and that really influenced what they created. And we have some artifacts of whether prints or sculptures here for those who join afterwards. Here's a few families and a settlement in traditional clothes. Again, like in their environment, and again, like what you can see and what we'll see also, like in their prints, it's like it's white, it's snow, it's cold. They live in the tundra, so there's no vegetation during wintertime. There's no trees. The only wood that you can find is drifted wood, and all the vegetables and vegetation that you can find is lichens, weeds, seaweeds, when it's warm enough so that you can have it. So the only subsistence was animals. And what do you think the animals would be in their environment right now? What animals would live around them?
Huskies?
Huskies, yeah. Like dogs.
Seals.
Seals, yeah. Whales, yeah.
Polar bears.
Polar bears. Polar bears, yeah, of course. And, yeah. Wolves as well. So they would not eat all of them. Like, huskies would definitely be useful for transportation, and they were part of the community. Wolves, no, because they were like in competition with the wolves, and they had to be protected from the wolves. But all the others were definitely means of subsistence. And I put a few pictures of different animals, so they would not eat the Arctic owl. But it's like present, and it also like gives indication of where to find food. But caribou is a big part of not only the subsistence in terms of food, but in terms of also skin to wear, or creating tools with the antlers. Walruses and seals walruses were like the biggest source of meat and fat. Polar bears, whales or narwhals, and muskox that you can find quite a few in the north.
Well, sorry, I don't want to take you off topic, but it is related to this, and it actually came up with some students recently. Do you know, is it true that the Inuit actually are a completely meat-based diet? They get all of their nutrients?
I assume it is, because like when you the way they were living traditionally, so before the 40s and 50s, was that they were looking and moving for food.
Right. And
the only food that they could find was meat.
Well, yeah.
Because the lichen, they would like maybe eat it like in the summer, but the summer is a couple of months.
Yeah.
That's it. So all the subsistence. And the thing is that as they were traveling, there was no way a very limited way to store the food. So they were like traveling all the time to find the food. To that extent, like it's also there's been also like throughout years and centuries a kind of fear. Fear was always like present. Fear of being eaten, but fear of not having enough food to eat, and that might be perceived as cruel. And it was perceived as cruel when Southerners, who were Canadian from the South, first visited the Arctic. But they would kill people of their community that they couldn't feed, so that the elders or young babies, because there was not enough food to live on it. So it was really, and this was part of course, their legends that nurtured their legends, their spirit, but also their everyday life. That was it's a very dangerous environment. Like the cold it is, but also like finding a way to keep on living. Briefly, based on archaeological researches, the Inuit are the first dwellers of America. They probably and most likely crossed the Bering Strait 8,000 years ago, between 8,000 years ago and 4,000 years ago, coming from Mongolia and Siberia. And then they went all around the circumpolar, like between Siberia and Alaska to Greenland. And much before the other days of migration, the other ways of migration that went south and that gave Native American societies. So culturally and linguistically, they are very different from any Native American community and ethnicity. Here, this is more like a spread out. So it's mainly in northern Canada, a little bit in Alaska. And here you see on the map that is really like almost beyond polar circle. So when their time was not spent finding food, it was like spent together to protect from the cold, so whether inside or when they were migrating. Here you have an example of it's called a Niviaksie, so it's like a boat where this is a whole camp, a whole settlement, traveling from one place to the other. And so they would go when the ice made them able to move around and go into other settlements where, for instance, the caribou herds would be, or whether the ice was like thin enough to fish and to go for seal or for narwhals, for instance. Based on that life that they kind of had throughout generations, there was one important figure in their community, which is the shaman. And the shaman, does anyone know what a shaman is?
A holy man?
A holy man. A holy man or a holy woman. Like it could be both man or woman, and it's a particular person in the community that is the intermediary between the spirits and the people. And it's someone that is kind of sacred in a community because they can be feared, they have powers, they're said to be able to fly, to be able to have like definitely like supernatural powers, and at the same time they were healers, so they could really protect also the community. You have some, and I'll go a little bit like through a few similarities between the Inuit and Japan on different levels. But the Ainus, for instance, have among their society a special part, a special role for shamans. Also, like in Japan, I think it was in the first centuries, like up until the 8th centuries, the emperor or the empress was a kind of shaman, like being at that time, like it's still the intermediary between the gods and the people, but at that time there was like special powers, like talking in a way to the gods. Here, it's not gods, it's spirits, and anything has a spirit in the Arctic. So any animal, any human being after death, like has his or her spirit keep on living. And we'll see, like in the artistic creation, it's like this is very present. Like everything is alive. This is another picture of a shaman, which usually they were kind of getting empowered during trances and transforming themselves. And transformation is a big part of also the artistic creation, but of the culture. Getting spirits from animals or from ancestors and transmitting them. Those are, as they were nomadic until the 1940s, when really there was a switch in the society. The Canadian government sent more and more people from the administration to explore the north, but also like to settle the north. So that's not the only reason, but one of the reasons for the Inuit was like it totally changed their way of life, whereas they were moving and traveling around before, and they were kind of forced to settle in different encampments. before that, as they were traveling, the artistic creation was very limited. They could, here are some examples of amulets or charms that they would take with them, and I put the example with a measuring line because it's very tiny. As they were carrying a limited number of things, like this embodiment of spirits had to be really small. What do you think it's made of? Bone, yeah. Tusk. Yeah. Stone. Yeah. Bone, tusk, stone. Some were made with drifted wood, but they didn't go through. And those were sometimes exchanged with visitors from the south, like the first, I don't know how to say that in English, like people who were hunting for skin. Trappers, and they were exchanging that with goods that were coming from the south. Mainly at the beginning of the 19th century, they were living on trading white fox fur. The price of white fox fur really went down in the West, so they had no way to get more money to subsidize, and that's how for subsistence, and that's how the Canadian government really helped settle made settlements for Inuits so that they could provide food, education, religion, etc. And it totally changed their way of life. One way to keep subsistence and keep having something to trade for themselves, and that was also on the initiation of a few administrators of the Canadian government, was to create art, and on bigger scale, and developing a southern market, first in southern Canada, and then mostly in the US and in other countries. So that's mostly the bigger scale, and those pieces that you have here, they were initiated in the late 1940s and then 1950s. In 1970, in Osaka, there was World Expo, and on the Canadian Pavilion there was a huge mural by one women artist, an Inuit artist. That's not the mural, but that's kind of her main and iconic work. She did that piece, I think, late 70s, 67, if I recall, and the woman is called Kenojuak Ashevak. What do you think it is?
Now?
Yeah. And it's called the Enchanted Owl. A lot of their initial works came from animals around, and in her works she did a lot of animal and how they live together and live with human beings, and transmitted it in a very graphic way. Simple, and you'll see a lot of the time the background is white, and there's just the focus on one animal or one character on it. This is another piece that she did earlier, and it was, I think, one of the first pieces, and it's called Rabbit Eating Seaweed. And you can feel, because that's what they noticed, that's what she was doing when she had 4 or 5 children, going to take for weeds or for drifted wood, and then it would be rabbits eating seaweed. Only with one color, so that was again very limited at the beginning. And at the same time, you could feel the vividness in it, the seaweed is kind of alive in it. So there's, I would say in a way, a very naive touch in the art. And some of the printing or drawings look like almost children drawing, because it was kind of naturalistic, but at the same time you have that vividness, empowering the work with that spirit. So any animal, any living thing would have a soul and would be represented that way. So here are a few of animals throughout the years that they kind of draw. This is a muskox, and again the focus on the muskox here are a few features of the animal. On the horns to defend itself, the muskox to protect themselves in the north, they make circles, especially to protect themselves from the wolves, a little bit like wagons of people who are migrating on the west. their paws like to run because that's their way to escape, and their fur, and they were hunted for their fur. And here, like there was like a lot of graphic work on their fur. All the ones that I'm showing you now are prints. They were based from drawings, but they are prints. And this, and you have a few here that are presented. They were usually made at 50 issues, like issued on 50, number of 50. One question, what do you think, like to print it, what do you think it was done or carved on? Like the principle of printing, like you would have a drawing, you would reproduce a negative web drawing, carve it on the material, and then add ink or color and press it on a number of times. So usually here it's like 50 times on paper.
Is it like Japanese woodblock?
Well, that's how it came from. No, actually, it came from the technique came from Japan. In Japan, it's like a long history of woodblock printing, like ukiyo-e in the 18th century, 19th century, correct me if I'm wrong. 18th, and that definitely inspired the technique to do it. But in the Arctic, like wood wouldn't be a material that was first available, and that would last long. So they would do it initially on linoleum, because that's what they had in the first settlements, and it was tender enough to carve things in it. And then on stones, because stone is the main thing that you can find all over. And there are very different types of stones, and it's quite available. It's one of the most available things. Those are caribous. I took this one like to do the little posters of a mother bear with a cub swimming. And again, it's very limited in the way that it's designed. It's really focusing on the subject. Similar to the Japanese way, and they were influenced by Japan to do those prints, because a few artists went to Japan to learn the techniques, and Japanese artists came to Cape Dorset, who was the first studio where they installed it. It's like a floating world, like the ukiyo-e world. Right? You have the character, but in a world that is kind of blurred around. Here, definitely the world is totally blurred because it's blizzard and white and snow all over.
So, well, did you say that these are, because you showed an example earlier, I think rabbit-eating seaweed or something.
Yeah.
Are these early examples, or is this a different style than the sort of the more mainstream, the owl that you showed in the Muskox over there?
This is probably the owl is the 60s, this is the 60s as well. Yeah. Those are more the 50s, so they are like really the first ones that we made.
So this is when it's sort of experimenting and developing a style.
Yeah.
I see. I've never seen anything like this before, this early stuff.
No, like before the 50s, there was nothing. They would draw, but then they would keep the drawings, and then here it was more like a new creation. So in a way, it's kind of a modern influence creation based on their environment.
So this is really more like the folk art. Things for them, folk art. So it's for themselves when they're making this kind of art.
No, this is just to be sold.
Oh, it is. Oh, okay.
Yeah, this is to be sold.
No,
this is like to show it to the rest of the world.
Okay.
Like they wouldn't have it. Probably, very few would have it like in a house
right.
or in the backyard. Here are some other examples of a bear, very stylized, a walrus. Again, like these are more like 70s, I would say. Also, works focusing on their traditional and the traditions that they kind of lost because they are not doing it anymore. They are not hunting for a seal in the ice anymore. That was made in the 50s, so there were still a few hunters and still a few community. Nowadays, it's not. Like they're eating food in tin cans or things that is like brought from the north. Yes, happy Inuit. And one that is kind of the transition also, like it's after the figurative part and really like reproducing things that they see or that they thought. This is, I think, in a way very contemporary and is like very stylized. It's called splitting and cutting meat. Men were hunting, women were cutting meat and splitting it in equal portions for the whole community. And oops, I'll go fast with the others. But it's very, I think, very modern in a way that they approached it and showed it. And then the South came, and it kind of transformed their life. And a few artists like represented that change in their life. And here you have the helicopter, which is bringing food, bringing subsistence, but also taking away what is their traditions and what is their life. Like here, that woman is putting skins to dry on normal tusks, but then the helicopter is taking it away also and bringing it to the south. So it's kind of, we kind of live on it, but at the same time losing part of it. This is called, how's it called? Imposed migration. And like the animals that they were living in, that they were also worshipping, are being transported as they are to really settlements which they sometimes don't belong to. So the art was also a way to express their social reaction. This is a very new artist that was made like 6 years ago, and it's called Arctic Appetizer. So like making fun also of the way that like they are using their subsistence more and more, but like to tease out of the south. One that I used in one of the pictures, spirits are everywhere. Those are spirit of the pots, or pots of the spirit. So when new material was brought up north, teapots, cans, they got spirits as well, and that's how like they represented it, like with their feet, with their beak, like they're mixed with animals. I was talking before about the shamans and the transformation and the spirits that got into here I presented a lot of prints. A major part of the production is actually carving and sculptures, and one that is very much represented are the dancing bears. The bears are not dancing in the north. There's no dancing bears in the north. But a dancing bear is like inhabited by the spirit of a shaman, or a shaman inhabited by the spirit of the bear, and during a trance, like a shaman would have the same sound of a bear and be as fierce as a bear, and that's how like it's represented in a dancing bear. Some other transformations of here, a muskox and a man. Here, a man and a bird, and using different material. Mostly stone, but also here it's bone, and it's vertebra. We have one example of the other use of vertebra over there. Here you have two examples about the history of drum dancers and shaman, like a very kind of a figurative but energetic one, and this is also a drum dancer, but more, I would say, contemporary and more very. And just to finish with, here are a few pictures of the artists that made the whether the prints or the sculptures that are some that are here, whether in their outdoor environment. Kenojuak Ashevak here is the one that is the Enchanted, and here that's the first studio in the north where they started printing. If you want to see, I mean, we were talking about Aaron earlier. If you want to see some pieces, and especially sculptures, you can go to the Canadian Embassy. There's a gallery over there, and around the gallery you have pieces of Inuit art. It's available like during opening hours, and it's free. So enjoy. Thank you.